It is Sunday, the 5th of February, 2017. We're in front of the Unitarian Church of Montreal, protesting against Unitarian Universalist injustices, abuses, and hypocrisy. And I was just in the middle of a monologue about Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein's false sexual harassment accusation against me. So we're going to continue that. Essentially, the first half-hour segment of video recording ran out, and I had to start the recording again. So we were talking about Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein, also known as Peace Bang. That's the handle she goes by on the internet. She has a Peace Bang blog and Peace Bang Twitter account. Anyway, she, in collusion with the Unitarian Universalist Association, had Stikeman Elliott, barristers and solicitors litigation lawyer, Maitre Marc-Andre Coulombe, have me served with a cease and desist demand letter that accused me of threatening and defamatory conduct amounting to sexual harassment of her for publicly criticizing her sodomy fantasy. So what was Peace Bang's sodomy fantasy that I was criticizing, that she tried to pretend that my criticizing of her sodomy fantasy amounted to sexual harassment? Here's her sodomy fantasy. Oh, thank you for the Trudeau salute. I'll be giving you back one very soon. In fact, you're getting one right now. You're an idiot, sir, if you're giving me a Trudeau salute for protesting against misuse of blasphemy law by Unitarian Universalists to hide pedophilia and rape, sir. But you'll be getting a Trudeau salute back very soon. So this guy gives me the finger. Up here in Canada, we call this a Trudeau salute because former Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau once gave the finger to, I believe it was strikers, if I remember correctly. I can't remember exactly what the incident was, but I'm pretty sure that it was to some striking workers. Might have been to journalists, but I'm pretty sure it was to striking workers. And so as a result of Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau giving the finger while he was Prime Minister of Canada, the flipping the bird, giving the finger, became known as a Trudeau salute up here in Soviet Kanakistan, also known as Canada. So yeah, this guy gives me a Trudeau salute because I'm protesting against Unitarian Universalists misusing blasphemy law to cover up and deny pedophilia and rape. Well, good for you, sir. Anyway, getting back to Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein's sodomy fantasy, that is, that I am allegedly guilty of. Okay, there goes a little police car. We'll see if it has anything to do with this protest or not soon enough, I guess. But so far, the SPVM in 2016 have kept interventions to an absolute minimum. There was only one police intervention in May of 2016, so we'll see what happens in 2017. But I think, after assessing the situation, the SPVM has realized that the best thing they can do is just let me protest and not interfere in my protest. But anyway, getting back to Peace Bang's sodomy fantasy and her sexual harassment accusation against me. What happened is back in 2006, a South Dakota state senator, a Republican by the name of William Napoli, Bill Napoli, made some, quite questionable, shall we say, statements about rape in the context of opposing abortion. Essentially, he was opposing legalizing abortion or extending that somehow, and he said that the only circumstance in which he might be open to abortion is if a woman had been raped quite severely, and under this circumstance he would accept it. So it's kind of ironic that in a way, even though what he said was certainly open to criticism and question and so on, that he was actually opening up a little bit. He was actually opening up to the possibility of accepting abortion in the case of a rape. But because what he said was, just a tad offensive, to say the least, Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein got on her self-righteous high horse, as she often does, and totally blasted Senator Bill Napoli in a Peace Bang blog post. And towards the end of her blog post, in what was effectively a concluding statement, she said, and this is an exact quote, or a very close to exact quote, "Here's my sodomy fantasy. South Dakota State Senator Bill Napoli anally impaled on the Statue of Liberty's torch." That's an exact quote, or very close to an exact quote. So one more time, here's my sodomy fantasy. South Dakota State Senator Bill Napoli anally impaled on the Statue of Liberty's torch. And, from my perspective, this is what we would call conduct unbecoming a minister, to say the very least. And in fact, I actually filed a complaint, not right away, but after Peace Bang had compiled a whole list of offenses in terms of things she has said on the internet, I finally filed a complaint against her for essentially conduct unbecoming a minister. Basically being very offensive and rude and abusive and so on towards people on the internet. The complaint was dismissed out of hand by the Unitarian Universalist Association, as is its habit. When people complain about clergy misconduct of, pretty much any kind, their complaints are very often dismissed out of hand by the Unitarian Universalist Association. They come up with, some kind of excuse for pretending that the minister's behavior was acceptable or whatever. So this is what happened. So anyway, I blogged about it. I posted criticism. I even mocked Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein for her sodomy fantasy. In fact, I had a blog post titled, "Happy shall Peace Bang be when she taketh and anally impaleth Senator Bill Napoli on the Statue of Liberty's torch," because this was what her fantasy was all about. It was all about having Senator Bill Napoli anally impaled on the Statue of Liberty's torch. So this is essentially a kind of revenge porn anal rape fantasy on the part of Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein in reaction to Senator Bill Napoli's own questionable words. So instead of dealing with it in a moderate manner, good morning, Peace Bang, in her usual habit, just went ballistic, and so I criticized that, and as I said, to some extent mocked her. But what's interesting is, so now, years later, in 2012, Peace Bang and the Unitarian Universalist Association, they want my blog post criticizing Peace Bang to disappear. So what do? They accuse me of threatening and defamatory conduct amounting to sexual harassment of Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein. For what? For her own sodomy fantasy, as I've just described it a couple of times, is actually far more justifiably described as threatening and defamatory conduct amounting to sexual harassment of Senator Bill Napoli than my criticism, and yes, to some extent, mocking and ridiculing of Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein's sodomy fantasy can be described as threatening and defamatory conduct amounting to sexual harassment of her. There was nothing in my criticism of Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein that could be properly described as threatening, or could be properly described as defamatory. There's nothing defamatory at all. I was telling the well-documented truth about, you know, things she had actually said. I was providing some perfectly, you know, legitimate criticism. Yes, some mockery and ridicule too, but that's not defamatory if it's based on truthful statements, and not in the least. You know, there's nothing. It's not sexual harassment to criticize someone else's sexual harassment, which is essentially what it comes down to. I was criticizing, you know, Peace Bang's abusive behavior. How is that sexual harassment of her? I really don't know, and I don't think anyone else does either, not even a judge. And the fact of the matter is, you know, I challenged all of these false accusations in my email responses to Maitre Marc-Andre Coulombe. As far as I was concerned, there wasn't a one of them that had any validity that would stand up in a court of law. I was more than ready to go to court and defend myself if it came to it. And I made that very, very clear to Maitre Marc-Andre Coulombe. And, you know, guess what? I haven't heard from Maitre Marc-Andre Coulombe since, or from the Unitarian Universalist Association since. And I would like to say that, you know, it's February 5th, as I stated earlier, just 3 days after Groundhog Day. And I like to reimagine Groundhog Day as shadow of Unitarian Universalist clergy abuse day. In other words, when it's February 2nd, I like to poke my head out of my little secret burrow here up in Soviet Kanakistan and see whether or not the shadow of Unitarian Universalist clergy abuse and Unitarian Universalist cover-up and denial of clergy abuse still hangs over the UU world, as it were. And sure enough, yeah, I poked my head out of my little burrow here in Canada on February 2nd, and sure enough, there was a shadow. The shadow of the false blasphemous libel accusation hanging over, not me so much, because I don't give a shit, quite frankly. I'm enjoying it. It's total bullshit, and it's just totally ludicrous. Unitarian Universalists would just make even bigger fools of themselves if they ever tried to prosecute me for it. But no, the shadow is not on me so much as on the Unitarian Universalist religious community. And of course, you know, it's a stain. It's a stain on the Unitarian Universalist religious community that A, the UUA falsely accused me of blasphemous libel to hide pedophilia and rape, to say nothing of the other false accusations. B, that the Unitarian Universalist Association has obstinately refused to formally withdraw those false accusations and apologize for them. And C, the fact that basically there's not one single Unitarian Universalist minister, to say nothing of Unitarian Universalist lay people, who have gone on public record opposing the Unitarian Universalist Association's misuse of blasphemy law against me. People who really should have spoken out long ago never did. Now, they may have quietly had a few chats with board members and maybe even President Morales himself and expressed their disapproval, you know, privately, but that never resulted in the Unitarian Universalist Association withdrawing the accusations or apologizing. There was no accountability at all for anyone involved in this. And so, you know, their failure, indeed their refusal to speak out against this shameful misuse of blasphemy law makes them complicit in it, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm talking here primarily about, you know, people who normally Oh, here's Curtis Murphy again. How does it feel to be totally complicit in misuse of blasphemy law to hide pedophilia and rape, Curtis? You proud of that? You proud of your religious community falsely accusing a person of the criminal act of blasphemous libel in legal bullying intended to hide pedophilia and rape committed by Unitarian Universalist ministers? Have you spoken out against it, Curtis? Because if you haven't, you're violating the second principle of Unitarian Universalism. You're disregarding justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, Curtis. That's Curtis Murphy, a prospective Unitarian Universalist minister who kept his mouth shut, and I suspect he's been keeping his mouth shut for quite some time now, when it comes to speaking out against the Unitarian Universalist Association's misuse of blasphemy law to hide rape. You know, it's kind of ironic, funny little coincidence, you know, that here I was specifically speaking about Unitarian Universalist ministers who really should be speaking out against the Unitarian Universalist Association's misuse of blasphemy law, and along comes a prospective Unitarian Universalist minister. This is what Carl Gustav Jung would call synchronicity, meaningful coincidence. You know, Curtis could have come along at any old time or not come along at all, but he comes along at the precise moment in my monologue, which is now well over half an hour, more like 3/4 of an hour or so long. Let's see here. Yes, so I've been yammering on about the Unitarian Universalist misuse of blasphemy law, etc., 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 but it's only the last few minutes that I specifically spoke about Unitarian Universalist ministers failing or indeed refusing to speak out against the Unitarian Universalist Association's false blasphemous libel accusation against me, basically keeping silent, keeping secrets, doing absolutely nothing to ensure that Unitarian